I know, but we have a congressional act now to requiring the release, but they're going to say, you know
subject
what?
To
Tom
redaction.
Hanks, it's unfair that he was mentioned because he was eating Skittles.
Subject to redaction.
Subject to redaction.
And we all know what that means. That's to protect.
That's why I'm saying you will never be satisfied with.
Jay-Z's empire just collapsed, and the FBI files prove he saw it coming. Everyone assumed the Epstein document dump was just another celebrity sideshow, a final burst of tabloid noise before the story faded into archives and lawsuits. It wasn't. Right now, a single tip buried in 3 million pages is spreading through prosecutors' offices, boardrooms, and at least one very quiet household in LA. Accusers claim that she woke up in 1996 to Harvey Weinstein's hands on her, with Jay-Z standing in the room watching. The files don't just mention his name once. They tie him to a second incident, a 2000 VMA afterparty where a 13-year-old alleges she was passed between him and Diddy, while a third celebrity, still unnamed, looked on. His Instagram account dropped 100,000 followers in 72 hours. The NFL, his biggest corporate shield, released a 3-word statement: "Our relationship is unchanged." That's not loyalty. That's the sound of a deal unraveling. But here's what doesn't add up. If this is all fabricated, why is his team suing the accuser's lawyer instead of the accuser herself? And why is Beyonce quietly scrubbing old posts while her like on his latest post remains untouched? The files aren't done. The next tranche hits in 15 days. And the names redacted in the first batch weren't just victims, they were participants.
This morning, rap mogul Jay-Z is denying allegations he assaulted a 13-year-old girl alongside rapper Sean Diddy Combs. That civil lawsuit filed against Combs in October was amended Sunday to include Jay-Z. The accuser, identified only as Jane Doe, says she was assaulted by both.
The timing of this is everything. The Epstein files dropped in December, but the VMA lawsuit amendment hit days later, like a second wave designed to drown him. Industry sources say his team was prepared for the Weinstein mention. Old news. No corroboration. Easy to dismiss as a bad tip from a confused victim. But the VMA allegations? Those came with names, dates, and a paper trail. An NDA. A limo driver allegedly employed by Diddy. A detailed description of the house party. Then there's the reaction, or lack of one. Beyonce hasn't posted. She hasn't unfollowed. But her team has been quietly removing tagged photos of Jay-Z from her page. That doesn't scream solidarity. It screams strategy. Meanwhile, the NFL, his biggest corporate partner, issued a statement so carefully worded it might as well have been written by his lawyers: "Our relationship is unchanged." That's not support. That's a holding pattern. And the question no one is answering is why Roger Goodell, a man who suspended players for far less, would tie himself to this unless he's being forced to. Here's where the story bends. If this were just a shakedown, Jay-Z's team would have gone after the accuser, not her lawyer. They would have filed for defamation, not extortion. But they didn't. Instead, they attacked the man bringing the case forward, calling him a fraud and demanding the suit be dismissed unless the plaintiff reveals her identity. That's not a legal move. That's a threat. It's the same playbook Diddy used before his arrest: intimidate the accuser, discredit the lawyer, and hope the public loses interest. But the public isn't the problem anymore. The problem is the FBI's next tranche of files due in 15 days. The problem is the other names in those documents, the ones that haven't been redacted yet. The problem is that Jay-Z's legal team isn't just fighting a lawsuit. They're fighting a pattern. And patterns have a way of repeating.
I don't get no what you got in your head, that neural link. You'll never outthink me. Ever.
The VMA lawsuit isn't an outlier. It's a confirmation. People close to the situation have whispered for years about Jay-Z's private life, relationships with young women when he was in his 30s, stories involving Aaliyah and Foxy Brown, and an inner circle that has always seemed more afraid of him than loyal. But this is different. This isn't rumor. This is a legal filing with dates, descriptions, and a second person, Diddy, already in prison for similar crimes. And here's what no one is saying out loud: Diddy's trial is 5 months away. If he's facing 50 months for solicitation charges, what do you think he's willing to trade for a reduced sentence? The answer isn't a secret. It's sitting in court documents, waiting for the right moment to surface. Then there are the missing files. The Department of Justice released 3 million pages, but they're holding back another 2.5 million. Their excuse is privacy redactions. But privacy doesn't explain why certain names, people tied to Jeffrey Epstein's inner circle, are protected while others are exposed. It doesn't explain why the visible names keep pointing back to the same network: Weinstein, Maxwell, and now Jay-Z. The FBI's crisis intake report mentions him by name. The VMA lawsuit does the same. And what they share isn't just accusation, it's a description of behavior matching a specific profile. Not someone who merely commits acts, but someone who orchestrates them. The most damning part isn't what's in the files. It's what isn't. Jay-Z's name appears in 2 separate incidents decades apart, yet his team hasn't filed a single defamation claim. They've gone after a lawyer. They've stayed silent on the Weinstein allegation.
They don't want, if they was in any of those freak-off tapes, if they played a part in any of those Diddy sessions, they don't want it to get out to the general public to make up their brand. That's why a lot of those rappers...
They've let the NFL carry the public relations burden while they focus on damage control behind the scenes. That's not the behavior of someone confident in their innocence. That's the behavior of someone waiting for the next shoe to drop. And the next shoe isn't a lawsuit. It's an indictment. There's another detail no one is talking about: the female witness in the VMA lawsuit. The filing describes her as someone the plaintiff recognized immediately, someone famous enough that no introduction was needed. That's not a random partygoer. That's an insider. And insiders don't stay quiet unless they're being paid, or unless they're too powerful to touch. The question isn't just who she is. It's what she knows, and what she's willing to say when the pressure becomes unbearable. This isn't just about Jay-Z anymore. It's about the system that protected him, the labels that ignored rumors, the corporate partners that looked the other way, the spouses who stayed silent, and the fans who cheered while it all happened. The Epstein files didn't just expose a predator. They exposed a machine. And the machine is starting to break. The timing says everything. The files drop. The lawsuit is amended. Diddy's trial looms. And Jay-Z isn't fighting the accusations, he's fighting the people who repeat them. That's not a defense. That's a delay tactic. And the clock is running out. The next release of files isn't just coming, it's scheduled. If the first batch was this damaging, the second won't just be explosive. It will be catastrophic. One last detail doesn't fit. In 1999, Jay-Z stabbed a record executive in a nightclub over bootleg albums. He pleaded guilty. He got probation. And the world moved on. That wasn't a mistake. It was a test, and he passed it. The question now is simple. How many tests like that has he passed since? And how many more are buried in the files we haven't seen yet?
As far as, is he going to turn people in? Is he going to cooperate? If the federal government wants him to cooperate, and they're going to cut his time, because right now he's looking at 15 to life. With all the charges he had to, he won't get out till 70 years old. He about 70. That's when they start talking about letting him come to a halfway house.
The stabbing in 1999 wasn't an anomaly. It was a test run. Jay-Z didn't just attack Lance Rivera over bootleg albums. He walked up to him in a crowded nightclub, said, "You broke my heart," and then stabbed him. That's not a crime of passion. That's a message. And the message wasn't for Rivera. It was for everyone else in the room, this is what happens when you cross the line. He pleaded guilty, received probation, and the industry dismissed it as a thug moment, a relic of his past life. But here's the part no one connected until now. That same year, Diddy was involved in a nightclub shooting that left a woman with a bullet wound to her face. 2 separate incidents. 2 violent crimes. Neither man went to jail. That's not luck. That's how the system works when you're untouchable. And untouchable men don't just commit crimes, they refine them. The VMA lawsuit isn't the first time Jay-Z's name has been linked to allegations involving young women. In the 1990s, he was linked to Aaliyah when she was 15 and Foxy Brown when she was 16. The industry called it controversial. His fans called it hip-hop culture. But the pattern is what matters, the relationships, the power imbalance, and the way his inner circle has always operated like a shield. Then there's Beyonce. She was 19 when they met. The narrative was that she was the exception, the love story that proved he'd changed. But the question being asked now isn't about love. It's about leverage. Because when the Epstein files dropped, her team didn't panic. They strategized. They scrubbed old posts. They left her like on his latest Instagram post untouched. That's not the behavior of a wife standing by her man. That's the behavior of someone who understands exactly how deep the rabbit hole goes. Diddy's arrest changed everything. When he was charged with human trafficking last year, the industry treated it as an isolated incident, a fall from grace, not a pattern. Then the VMA lawsuit was amended to include Jay-Z's name, and suddenly they weren't just friends. They were co-defendants. The filing describes a party where a 13-year-old was allegedly passed between them while a third person watched. That's not a crime of impulse. That's a ritual. And rituals require planning. They require trust. They require a system. The question isn't just whether it happened. It's how many times it happened before someone finally spoke up, and how many people in that room are still protecting them. The NFL's statement wasn't just tone-deaf. It was a tell. When the allegations surfaced, they released 3 words: "Our relationship is unchanged." That's not support. That's negotiation. Because the NFL doesn't care about morality. They care about liability. If they're still standing by him, it means one of 2 things: either they know something that makes this disappear, or they're waiting for the right moment to cut him loose. And the fact that they haven't yet, that's the most unsettling part. Because it suggests whatever is coming next is worse than what we've already seen.
From what I've gathered from your articles, this seems to be a global network that Epstein was a part of, and I believe there are multiple Epsteins. Like, I don't believe that Jeffrey Epstein was the head of the snake. Yeah, like, they never go after the head of the snake. They never go after
the head of the snake, quote unquote, it's the billionaire class, and so there's a faction of these billionaires in our oligarchy. And of course, the American oligarchy, the American oligarchs don't necessarily, a lot of them don't have an allegiance necessarily.
The illusion of Jay-Z's untouchability has always been his greatest weapon. But it's also his biggest weakness. His empire isn't built on talent, or even money. It's built on contracts. And contracts can be terminated overnight when liability outweighs profit. Right now, his team is scrambling to keep sponsors from walking away. But the reality is stark. Tidal's streaming numbers are already dropping. Roc Nation's partners are reviewing their deals. And the NFL's relationship unchanged statement reads like a temporary stay of execution, not a vote of confidence. The moment one major brand cuts ties, the rest will follow. Not because they care about morality, but because no corporation wants to be the last one holding the bag when the scandal detonates. The first cracks are already visible. Apple Music has quietly removed his latest project from its front-page promotions. The NFL's social media accounts haven't featured him in weeks. And Roc Nation artists are staying silent, not out of loyalty, but self-preservation. This isn't solidarity. It's survival. In an industry where reputation is currency, Jay-Z's reputation is now radioactive. The math is simple. His influence only works if people are afraid to cross him. But when allegations involve minors, even the most powerful men lose leverage. The moment fear turns into risk assessment, the entire house of cards begins to shake. Here's what no one wants to admit: Jay-Z's real power was never his music. It was his ability to make people believe he was untouchable. But that belief only survives if the institutions propping him up, labels, sponsors, media, keep playing along. And right now, they're not. The Epstein files didn't just expose him. They gave corporations an excuse to walk away. Because no amount of clout outweighs a lawsuit. No amount of influence survives a boycott. And no amount of money can buy silence when allegations involve crimes that make brands run for cover. The question isn't if his empire will fall. It's how fast it collapses once the first domino tips. There's another detail being overlooked: his business model has always been about control, not just of his brand, but of the people around him. But control only works if you're holding the leverage. And now, the leverage has shifted. The FBI has files. Diddy has a trial. And corporations that once feared Jay-Z now fear being associated with him even more. That's not just a problem. That's a downfall sentence for a man whose entire career was built on the belief that he was too powerful to fail. Because when the money stops flowing, the loyalty evaporates. And when that happens, the only thing left is the truth.
So what happens now is this is simply a civil complaint. And in a civil complaint, it goes through the technical legal process. Now, the distinction, Jessica, between civil and criminal, of course, is that civil is for monetary damages, right? The system can only reward you with money. There's allegations that this 13-year-old is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, suffered depression, etc. So now you go to fact-finding.
The final irony is this: Jay-Z spent decades turning his criminal past into a brand. The stabbing, the drug dealing, the thug life persona, it was all part of the myth. But myths only work if they're controlled. And right now, he's no longer in control. The Epstein files didn't just reveal alleged crimes. They revealed a pattern. And patterns are what corporations fear most. A single allegation can be spun. A lawsuit can be settled. But a pattern? That's liability. And in the world of billion-dollar contracts, liability is the one thing that can't be negotiated away. The clock isn't just ticking on Jay-Z's reputation. It's ticking on his entire empire. The moment the first sponsor walks, the rest will follow, not because they want to, but because they have no choice. This is where the story gets darker. In 2001, Jay-Z was arrested outside a Manhattan nightclub after his bodyguard was found with a loaded weapon. No charges stuck to him, but the incident became another data point in a growing pattern: violence, weapons, and a sense of invincibility. Then there's the 40/40 Club controversy, $46,000 in bounced checks, lawsuits from vendors who were allegedly stiffed and then silenced. That's not bad business. That's how you operate when you believe no one can touch you. When you put it all together, the stabbing, the underage relationship allegations, the nightclub incidents, the Epstein connections, it's not a series of mistakes. It's a blueprint. The whispers surrounding Jay-Z's legal team aren't just about damage control anymore. They're about survival. Insiders claim his lawyers have been engaged in quiet, off-the-record discussions with the FBI for weeks, not to deny the allegations, but to negotiate their scope. The goal isn't to clear his name. It's to contain the fallout. And in cases like this, fallout isn't contained by proving innocence. It's contained by offering something bigger in exchange. The question isn't whether Jay-Z is guilty of anything. It's who he's willing to sacrifice to keep his name out of the next indictment.
But after that major documentary comes out on Diddy, then you're going to start to hear more and more about Jay-Z and his nefarious past.
This isn't just speculation. The timing lines up too perfectly. The Epstein files drop. The VMA lawsuit gets amended. And suddenly, the FBI's public language begins to change. Less talk about pursuing new leads. More talk about reviewing all available evidence. That's not the language of an aggressive investigation. That's the language of a deal. And deals don't happen unless someone has something to trade. The real problem for Jay-Z isn't the allegations themselves. It's the calendar. Diddy's trial is 5 months away, and a man facing 50 months in prison has nothing left to lose, except maybe the names of the people who were in the room with him. Here's where it gets interesting. The FBI doesn't just want Jay-Z. They want the network. And Jay-Z isn't just a rapper. He's a node, a connection point between hip-hop, Hollywood, and a level of power that doesn't just buy silence. It enforces it. If his lawyers are really at the table, they're not there to talk about Weinstein or Epstein. They're there to talk about the people who never made it into the files, the ones smart enough to stay off paper, the ones still considered untouchable. And in a situation like this, the only way to stay untouchable is to make sure someone else takes the fall first. There's another detail no one is talking about, the shift in Jay-Z's legal strategy over the last 2 weeks. At first, it was all aggression, attacking the accusers, calling the VMA lawsuit blackmail, targeting Tony Busby, demanding the plaintiff's identity be revealed. Then it stopped. The lawsuits went quiet. The public statements dried up. And suddenly, insider outlets began reporting that his team was cooperating with authorities. That's not the move of a man confident in his innocence. That's the move of someone deciding which battles are worth fighting, and which ones are better handed off to someone else. The real tell is the silence. Beyonce hasn't posted. The NFL hasn't wavered. And Diddy's team has been eerily quiet about Jay-Z's name appearing in the same lawsuit. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. Because if Jay-Z really is at the table with the FBI, he's not just negotiating for himself. He's negotiating for the people who can't afford to have their names appear in the next batch of files. And in a game like that, the only thing more dangerous than talking is being the last one left holding the bag when the music stops. This isn't just about Jay-Z anymore. It's about the system that protected him, the labels that ignored the rumors, the corporate partners that looked the other way, the spouses who stayed silent, and the fans who cheered while it all happened. The Epstein files didn't just expose alleged predators. They exposed a machine. And that machine is starting to break. So here are the questions that matter now. How many more names are buried in the missing files? What did Beyonce's team really scrub from her social media, and why? Who is the female witness in the VMA lawsuit, and what is she waiting for? And when the next tranche of documents drops, will Jay-Z fall alone, or will he take the entire industry down with him? Drop your theories in the comments. Because this isn't over. It's only getting started.